Amy Doak, congratulations on the 2-book contract with Penguin and many more to come after that. We'll get into all of the details, but I'm so excited to do this interview, and it's one of the more relaxed interviews I will do because Amy Doak is one of the founding members of the Writer's Block. We have her right here. It was actually you who opened the Facebook group because I was too scared to do it. And you were the entrepreneur who's like, Emily, quit your job and go into business, because I was too scared to do it. So thank you for doing this interview. Congratulations on your wonderful book. I just finished it. It's amazing. I'm not going to tell you the ending because it really is a total page turner, full of surprises. And so that's why I want to get in. So Amy Doak is a YA author. She also has self-published The List Your Life and done all sorts of other things. So I will stop talking so much, but thank you, Amy, for coming. And one of the
Thank you.
Yes, one of the first things I just want to give you the mic and go into is, so this either last year or the year before, you got an agent, and you can just talk up on all of this. You've been in the publishing system for so long, and then just a few years ago, you decided, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go for it all the way with different book ideas. Can you tell us the story of how you got an agent for this book?
Yeah, so I always had that dream of writing fiction, but was too scared to. And it's funny, I looked up at the original post where we met each other. We were in another group for women. And it's funny that I was looking through the comments on that post, and there's so many names that are still part of this group, which is awesome. But I had done that post saying I need someone to help me with my procrastination and self-sabotage and keep me accountable. And you were like, actually, I'm a book coach and I would love to, yeah. So that was late 2017. And so that was when I kind of was like, okay, I want to take this seriously. If I drop dead tomorrow, the one thing I would regret in life is that I didn't do this thing. And so I had all these books that I had started and little vignettes and things over the years, but I just, to finish, start to finish, I had never gone through that process of the 100,000 word manuscript. So that was like the aim. So I wrote my first kind of idea of what I wanted to, which was an action adventure with a kick-ass female lead, and that was I finished that in 2020, I think it was, and pitched it to agents and publishers, and sort of went through that process of working out where I could find a home for it. And I had no luck. I had lovely feedback from people, and which was really actually promising because it meant that my writing didn't suck. But the big common ground was we don't really know what to do with it, and it hasn't got a strong enough hook. And so the thing, I thought that if you got an agent or a publisher and they loved your work, that was enough. And it's not enough, because they're only the first step on this really long train that gets you to the readers. So to be traditionally published, the publisher has to sell it to their marketing and acquisitions people. The marketing and sales people have to sell it to the bookstores. The bookstores have to sell it to the readers. The readers have to enjoy it enough, and on it goes. And so if you don't have that thing that's really easy to, in a sentence, sum up why your book's worth reading, it's really hard for the publisher at the very top of that chain to be able to get everyone on board. And I hadn't really thought about that. And so the second idea that I had, which I'd been swimming around for a long time, was this YA mystery. It was kind of a modern take on Nancy Drew, but very Australian. So set in a country town. There's a lot of Aussie noir stuff around at the moment that's sort of little country towns, and it's a bit creepy, and it's good fun. As much as you can say that creepy is fun. And so that was my idea to do that. I'd always written in third person. I had a friend of mine who writes middle grade fiction who said YA is often first person, so you really need to go down that path, give it a go. And then she said to me, after I was a few chapters in, actually you should be first person present tense, not past tense, which I had never done before. So that was very nervous kind of moment for me. But as soon as I started doing it, it just felt so natural, and the character just really came to life. So I'm so grateful for that. But I knew that by having that kind of hook, there's a quite successful Aussie noir book called The Dry, which has been made into a movie by Jane Harper. It's a great book and quite popular globally. And so my pitch was exactly that, a modern day Nancy Drew meets The Dry. So everyone knew immediately what it was and where it belonged and how it fit in. I was also very thankful that there's other authors like Karen McManus and Holly Jackson that I could use as comparables, that people understood right from the get-go who my market was. So I realized that by doing all of those things, it was making everyone else's job easier. So
yes,
yeah.
and there's something I'm going to clarify. Please continue. I don't want to interrupt. And by clarify, I mean highlight, because it's awesome. Yes.
Yeah, so I finished writing that. I was going last year, so 2022, I was going to a writers' conference on the other side of Australia. And as part of that conference, you got to pitch to agents or publishers. There was a whole list that you could choose from, and you had a 10-minute session, which if anyone's ever done pitching before, 10 minutes is like quite a long time. It's only going to get about 2 or 3 minutes. And so I, again, on the suggestion of a published author friend, was to go for agents. And you don't really need to be agented in Australia. It's a really small industry. The publishers are quite hands-on, and it's not really that necessary to have an agent like it is perhaps in larger countries that have bigger sales and more markets and all of those things. But one of the reasons she suggested I go through an agent was because it gives you more opportunity to be able to refine the work if you get rejections along the way, but you're not burning bridges with the existing publishers. So by being able to get that feedback and talk with agents, and really polish that work as best you can, even if you get knocked back by all those agents, you've still got publishers to go to after that. So it was sort of like a really nice way to be able to work out whether the book was sellable, and also be able to refine it as best as I could. So I was really fortunate. I pitched 3 agents and I got manuscript requests, partials for 1 and fulls for 2. And that was really exciting. And that was in August. And so in September, Penguin Random House in Australia have opened for submissions for young readers. And so that's anything from picture books through to YA. And it was a friend of mine who's an editor sent me the little link on Facebook and said, or Instagram actually it was, you should do this, and your book's quite polished now because you've pitched it, so maybe just see what happens. And so I sent it in, and they tell you that if you don't hear from us in 14 weeks, it's a rejection. Consider it, they don't even tell you no.
Yes, because they get so many.
Right. And so I just thought, oh, slush pile, I'll never hear from them again, but why not? I'll just, throw my hat in the ring. And so that was mid-September. And then mid-October, I got a message from the agent that had got the partial asking for the full manuscript from me. And the same week, I got an email from a publisher at Penguin saying, we'd love to chat with you. So I was kind of able to email that agent back, who was the agent that I really wanted, and say, hey, Penguin want to talk to me. So, let me know how you go.
Yes.
Yeah, let's talk. And then I was able to chat with the editor and publisher at Penguin. And so they both loved the manuscript. As it turned out, the editor had been standing next to the admin assistant when they were printing out all of the submissions. And so she was standing next to the printer and waiting, and picked up the first page and loved the title, and then picked up the second page and loved the first couple of lines. And so she asked for the whole thing and took it home and read it that night. And so she's now my editor, and she has been such an advocate for me right from the get-go. Like, she just really resonated with it. And it's I'm so grateful for that little moment of fate every day, because it's I think it was thanks to her that it all kind of unfolded the way that it did. But they were not able to take it to acquisitions until the December. And so even then I didn't know, even though they'd been so positive about it. And by this stage I had signed that agent. So we had talked and got along really well, and she loved a lot of my ideas that I had beyond this. And so yeah, it got to December and they went to acquisitions, and I still thought I could get a no. You can still get rejected at that point. And just before Christmas last year, I found out that they were interested in buying the book. And my agent was then able to negotiate a 2-book deal, so a sequel to the first one, because I had some ideas for that. So I signed the contract in January, and then by September, which is super fast in traditional publishing, if anyone like is involved, normally it's years, right? And so the fact that I sort of signed paperwork, in January, and then it was out early September, just kind of blew my mind a little bit. And it's so, since then it's been a real I mean, people joke in publishing it's really slow until it's not, and it has been a really wild ride this year. So yeah, there you go.
And congratulations. We're going to go from there because there have been a lot of successes just in these past few months since it came out. But what you've just described is such an endorsement for hooks, because in the beginning of your story, I heard, and I remember you were tossing back ideas, you were kind of trying out manuscripts with agents, etc., and they weren't getting through. And now with this book, it has such a strong voice. You've got this character who is just smart and funny and original, and you've got this wonderful eye-stopping hook. And so I do think that that's a great it's such great encouragement for those of us who are getting the inevitable no's, because what you do is you collect the no's and then you learn and you tweak and you keep going. So I see the book right by your side. Eleanor Jones is not a murderer, a YA book. I mean, that's such a great hook. Will you bring it right close to the screen so we can see it? This is the book you will all be ordering, and I will have it in the links below. It's gorgeous. And so it's really great because we go through rejections and we learn and we grow and we snowball forward. You're so familiar with this ecosystem. And so it's so great to get the behind the scenes. But when the stars align, you can start to flip those no's into yeses, but it doesn't happen immediately. And so I think that's such a valuable story. I took notes. Oh, because there's another thing I wanted to highlight about what you said. It's interesting because your book has had so much success. You've won some accolades that I want to get into in a moment, but it's niche. This is noir, it's Australian. And so they saw it and they saw other comparative titles, which is a part of a book proposal that I think sometimes people are daunted by, but they knew where to put it on the shelf. And so I think so many of us think if we get rejected, we're not a good enough writer. And that's not true. It's not about how good the writing is. It's we're a business and there is a bookshelf. Do we know where we can put it on the bookshelf so it will sell? And so that's why that hook is so important. We know that young adults like mystery novels with first crushes in them, and it's just really, really fun. And so you really hit it where they could sell it, and that's wonderful. So now we've gotten all the way to September of this year. Congratulations. But that's only the beginning. And so I think another thing, knowing my audience so well, is that when we first start out at this, we think it's New York Times bestseller or nothing. And so you have had so many great spotlights, so many great marketing moments. And so I'd love to, let's just continue the story from there. What happened after September?
So I think the things that my expectations were pretty low, to be honest. Like you said, I've self-published. I've worked with really small independent publishers in a non-fiction realm. I have done all sorts of weird things within the publishing world. And I know how hard it is, right? It is so hard to sell one book. It is so hard. And so I thought, exactly like you said, it's niche, it's YA, it's Australia. My contract initially was just Australia, New Zealand. And so with that, I thought, I'd be lucky to sell, like a bestseller in Australia is about 10,000 copies. Like we have such a small market here, and most authors, it's not a full time.
Yeah.
Because you can't afford to live off that, right? And people are shocked when they find that out. And so you know, you really do it for the love of it. And my goal was that I would sell enough that the publisher would deem it valuable enough to want me to keep writing for them. That was kind of my only, you know, thing that was a measure of success or the marker of success
That's
for me.
how you define success, exactly. And that's such a gorgeous definition. Yes.
And so I also knew it's commercial fiction, right? So when you write genre fiction, you're less likely to win awards. You'll, you know, a lot of award-winning fiction is literary. And so I had very low expectations for that. It had murder in the title, and it was like, I didn't even think that the schools would be very interested in it because of that. So I just, yeah, my expectations were very, very low. Let's just say that.
We've
And
tapped
so
your modesty now. And so what actually happened? Yes. Amy is modest, just so you know.
I think
Yes.
the surprises kind of started really early on. It was back in March. I was on a list that was the top YA reads upcoming for this year. And there was Karen McManus, and then there was me, and then there was Jennifer Lynn Barnes. And I nearly fell over because my book wasn't even out at that stage. And there was some advanced copies that were kind of floating around, but yeah. And so to kind of be on this list was just like, it made my brain explode. And then when I got to just before the book came out, I started getting some early reviews in, and, you know, they weren't all great, but some of them were amazing. And Books and Publishing had done a beautiful, such a thoughtful, lovely review. And then there were a few other industry publications that I didn't expect to get a review from at all. And not only did they review it, but they really said wonderful things. And I'd made a bit of a blanket rule. I wasn't going to read reviews anyway, because I kind of feel like if you believe the good ones, you have to believe the bad ones too. So I'm never really sure how to take them. But my lovely publisher is great, and my publicist, and they were like sending through sort of the good ones as they came in and saying, this one, you can read this one, it's okay. And then, yeah, so then when the book came out, that was early September, and it was not even out for a day, and I found out that Dymocks, which is sort of the Australian version of Barnes and Noble, I suppose, is one of our largest booksellers, that it was chosen as the YA book of the month for September, which was a fantastic way to be able to launch it into the world. And then as sort of things went on, there were lists that it made, you know, I was in the top 5 of Readings, which is another really big book chain in Australia, and for the younger readers. And so there were sort of all of these measures. I was able to get distribution through a company that sells to all the school libraries. And so that was amazing as well, to be able to be in all the high schools. And so, yeah, there was just so many things that I didn't expect that were so amazing, that you kind of would have hoped for after one or, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 books, to be able to have those things happen. Yeah, was pretty incredible.
And they happened. And so, and this is really great, because there is the publishing industry is so extremely robust. We have self-published books. We have traditionally published books. We have all sorts of distribution tunnels and funnels, school libraries. We have, you know, featured books in various places. And so when you can get to know this ecosystem, you can see so many opportunities. And one of the things that I love from our conversation is, you know, defining success for yourself. And I think when you define success for yourself, you have to nerd out on this stuff like we do, you know, and then you start to see, well, you know, this is what I'm superficially supposed to want. I'm supposed to want a famous actress to play me in a famous movie like Elizabeth Gilbert. That's what I'm supposed to want. But actually, I want to move people in my community. I want kids in school libraries to have fun with my book. And so that's where the real fulfillment comes. And so there is something huge to be said for low expectations and then growing from there, because I think all of us have experienced and if we have these, I feel entitled to go straight to the moon ideas, then that can
Mm.
crash our ship a little
Yeah.
faster. I mean, it can lead to a lot of tears. And it's by learning this robust system where we can pile on success after success. I like to talk about snowballs. Just know you're on the path and know you're on the way. One other thing I want to highlight is one thing you mentioned to me once is that some of the reviews talked about the strong voice of the character, which is what I noticed immediately and what you have gotten feedback again and again. This hook, Eleanor Jones is not a murderer. And then right within the first paragraph, I am 100% not a murderer. And so that grabs people. And so it's kind of like really strong coffee or coffee with milk. You're gonna get different reviews from people. If you're a strong coffee drinker and somebody gives you coffee with milk, you're
Yeah.
gonna spit it in their face, like all over the Amazon reviews. So you can't take it personally. And it's actually those, as your editor, I'm sure, is saying, it's when you get emotions out of people, that's a good sign,
Yeah.
even more than what the emotions are
Yeah.
of themselves. So
It's funny. It's funny I realized was important to me that I didn't realize earlier. So there was lots of sort of industry accolades that were really unexpected and really amazing. And then there was some things that happened as far as lists and that. But, a lot of the people in my life don't know any of that. They don't know the publishing world at all. They just read a book that they see on the shelf and they like it or they don't like it. And so, my loved ones around me, I'd sort of get a little pat on the head like, oh, good for you. And anyway, what's everyone else up to? Like, it's sort of very low key. And so I think sometimes that can be hard for authors too, when they do hit a milestone that they think everyone should be impressed by, whether they are or not, and then are disappointed when people don't really care. And so I think that's why it's important to kind of measure what your feelings of success are as well. And the thing that shocked me the most, or not shocked me the most, because I guess it's deep down what I was hoping for, every time I get a message from a parent saying this is, I've got a little folder on my phone that just is young readers, and because obviously I can't share that sort of stuff on socials, and so it's kind of just there for me. And I have beautiful pictures of people, these kids hiding under their doona reading it, or eating breakfast and have a few more pages to go before they go to school to finish it. And feedback about my child hasn't read a book for 5 years and they've just devoured this in 2 days. And that is just like the biggest gift, and it actually gets me all emotional, and I'm like, this is why I wanted to do this, right? And so all of those other things don't actually even matter, because this is the thing. Yeah.
Exactly. You have been turning pages in books and allowing them to just move your soul for years. And I imagine it started at a young age for you.
Yeah.
And now this is the book, because it's this fast-paced, protagonist who is really independent and really kind of alternative. And so this is what, weird, cheeky, alternative girls, like, that's what they identify with this character. And then the fact that there's this mystery plot is what makes them turn the pages. And so it's such a gift, and you're giving to other young people what you started doing at a young age, so the earth can survive, because we have people who read books who are growing up now. Yeah, exactly. It's wonderful. And so, because you know so much about the publishing industry, I love all of this behind the scenes of this. It's so great. And so I want to talk a little bit about comparing self-publishing, traditional publishing. Give us a little bit more on the behind the scenes, since you've done both. What advice do you have for people? Just give us a little more of that. Take the mic. Sorry.
So yeah, I think that all forms are amazing, and I think we're so lucky that you have the choice, right? And so I think it's brilliant that you can almost look at what kind of writer you are and what kind of writer you want to be, and then just find the spot in the publishing world that suits you. And whether that is kind of a a hybrid indie, or whether it's, you know, full self-publishing, we do everything on your own because that's the way that your creative brain works and you want to be able to do that, and you've got a business brain as well. Or if you just like where I wanted to be, I've gone through the, you know, gamut of I've run my own business multiple times, I've done all sorts of things, and I just wanted to write. I just wanted someone to say to me, just write. And you know, when I signed with my agent, that was what she said to me, and I nearly cried, was what do you want me to do next? And she said, just keep writing. That's you don't have to do anything else. You know, I've got it. And oh my gosh, you know, amazing. And so that was part of the reason why I wanted to be traditional, because I wanted to have that freedom to just wear one hat for once. Whereas some people love wearing a million hats, and so they love being in control of every aspect of it. They're real numbers people. They are interested in, you know, Facebook ads and you know, how to best get their book into different places and do all of those things, and that side of it's just as exciting to them as the actual writing the content.
That's
And so for
me.
those, right, and so for
Exactly.
those people, it's amazing that you've got so many options and there's so many things that you can do in order to really have your book be any way that you want it to be, and have your author business be any way that you want it to be. But I think that it comes back to expectations again, right? So you can't be indie and expect your book to be on the end of a, you know, a Barnes and Noble shelf, right? It's not going to happen. It's just not. Because there's deals that are done with merchandisers and publishers and all sorts of things to make those things happen. And so get that, but you know, and at the same time, if you're traditionally published, that's not a guarantee that you're going to get an ebook or an audiobook or any of those things, because they're all separate as part of your contract. And so it's not, and depending on how sales go of everything else will depend on what else can happen. So you can't get mad if you don't get an audiobook as if you're traditionally published. If you're indie, you can do that yourself. You can do all of those things. So there's kind of this constant balance as far as expectations and what's possible. And you just have to be really aware of everything across the board, and then say, okay, well, this is you know, this is maybe where I'll fit into that, and that's what I'll aim for. Yeah.
Exactly. And in your situation, you have wonderful advocates in your corner. And so your agent is your advocate. And so she says, just sit and write, and we're going to sell the books. And on the other hand, now that you're in a traditional system, this is great because, and this is the dream for so many of us who are a part of this community, sit and write. Don't worry about anything else. That's great. But the hook on that book, the YA, the niche, the reason you have those advocates is because they've sold books like these and they know how to sell it.
Yeah.
And so I suppose the lesson to take away from all of this is understanding the ecosystem and the economics of the books, because all things said and done, it's not necessarily going to bring in what you need to bring in all the time. But when you have great advocates in your corner and you understand what they need in order to do this for you, then that is a wonderful definition of success, and it's a wonderful path to success. Absolutely.
Not, even with traditional, I think there's this perception that, well, you've got this 2-book deal and this first book's doing really well, and that just means you're off and running. And that's not how it works, right? So my contract, for all intents and purposes, is nearly done. My second book's written. I'm going through the editing process with that at the moment. It's out July of next year. And once that hits the shelves, I have nothing. I'm right back with everybody else again at the beginning. And so I think that that's something that's not talked about enough either, is that I've pitched to my publisher some more ideas and I've been writing, but there's this feeling when you're not published that it's quite a self-indulgent process, that you just like, no one's asked me to write this book, but here I'm spending all my time writing this book. And I'm feeling that feeling all over again. So I'm working on something at the moment that they may not take and they may not be interested in, and my agent may not be able to sell. And so I think that it's important to recognize too that for people who love a bit of control and they want to know that their next book is going to happen, then definitely indie is better, because you don't have all of those kind of people along the way that are making decisions around you. So whilst it's great that I've got people making decisions for me, it's also not. And it's important to sort of recognize that.
Yes, there are twists and turns, and you're always kind of chasing the dream, which leads me directly to my final question, which is, what advice would you have for people who are in the middle of this, who are taking the amazing, what I find to be beautiful risk of writing a book and want to be successful at it?
So obviously keep writing. Everyone says that. Keep writing, keep writing, keep writing. I see a lot of people who have this one project or this one book, and they just keep at it, and they keep revising it and reviewing it and changing it, and then going back and rewriting it again. And sometimes I think you need to put things aside and go on to the next thing. And you might come back to that. It doesn't mean it's goodbye forever, but I think sometimes you just need to keep writing and keep moving forward. And it's interesting. I love talking to authors about their journey, and regardless of what sort of format or genre, anything that they work in, because I find it so fascinating. And the amount of authors who have told me about how they've written, 1, 2, 3, 5, 9 books, and then been signed, or then started publishing, and then they've got this whole backlist that they've been able to just deliver and say, okay, here I am. And so if you're writing stuff and it's not going anywhere, it's not wasted writing. I spoke to an author just recently who, after 49 rejections, got a 6-figure deal for 2 books.
Oh my gosh.
And their first book has been worldwide bestseller, amazing. The second book was meant to be out this year, and she wrote it and just was like, I'm not okay with this. And shelved it and asked for an extension, and has started from scratch. And now the book will be out next year. And she's like, I do feel like this is all wasted. But then she's recently been asked to submit some short pieces and some other things. And she's been able to pull from, like, she's got all these great words that weren't necessarily the perfect story, but they're being able to be utilized, and a character that she's going to draw into another story down the track, and all of those sort of things. So there is no wasted writing. And I think that all it does is just refine your voice even more and more. So I wish that I had maybe believed in that earlier. And I think that a lot of people get so caught up when they decide to start writing, and all they're thinking about is what happens at the end and the publishing side of it, rather than just focusing on the writing and the words and storytelling, and refining that, and really finding what works for you as a writer, rather than focusing on the end result. So, yeah.
As you are somebody who has brought this home for me so much, in that it's not a risk if you love what you're doing in the moment. And so it's so important to really enjoy the process, because, and you're so emblematic of this, in that you tweaked, you tested, you tried different routes, but you have always loved it. And so then, as you just keep rolling that snowball, I like what you mentioned, people who are indie publishers. There are, Colleen Hoover is now just gone through the roof. There are so many people who have done so well publishing their own books. And as you mentioned, a person who was publishing book after book after book, and then she had all of these books. When the traditional publisher finally took notice, she's just like, okay, you want these too? And then all of a sudden that creates wonderful cash flow. And so we're always just rolling that snowball from the style and the knowledge and the craft. And then of course, just, marketing and doing fun conversations like this, etc. We're just moving forward as authors. Yeah. Did you have a last thing you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think the other big thing is sharing your work. I was always a bit scared to do that. And it is hard, because you need to for those people to be your first readers, you need to really trust, and you need to also know what you want out of them. So for me, in order to get a manuscript finished, I just need a cheerleader, and I need someone who's not going to tell me what needs changing or what they liked or didn't like about it, but more just, this was awesome, keep going, when are you going to give me more pages? And that's enough to keep me going. And I still need that now. And so I think everybody's different in how they're motivated and what works for them, but I would so encourage people to have a first reader of some sort that is going to give them what will motivate them to keep going. And it's not only that fear of kind of putting your work out there and having it judged it doesn't ever go away. And so the more that you can do it, kind of the less it burns when you do. And so, yeah, I would really encourage people, whether it's a critique group or whether it's, you know, just someone who you trust that's a good writer or a good reader, to be able to just keep, and they're going to be a good cheerleader for you, to just keep putting it out there and letting other people read your stuff, because it does really, it sort of forces you to keep going in a way, but it also helps you become more brave. And so as you get closer and closer to the end and polishing it and doing all of those things, you're happier for other people to read it, and it's not quite so scary and everything else. So yeah, I think that a lot of people think that being a writer is just sitting alone in your room and typing and then just delivering it to the world. And it's such a team effort, and so many people are involved in that end process. It's not even funny. There's a reason acknowledgements go for the pages, because yeah, it really is a collaboration with lots and lots and lots of people. And I think that is something that isn't recognized enough. Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing the work. You have sat back down at your desk and pushed forward so much. We will always be supporting you here, and you're such a great example for all of us. So if you want to read a book that broke through into Penguin on its own merits, would you flash us the book one more time so we can see it right by you? Yes. Eleanor Jones is not a murderer. This is what got through the door. So Amy, thank you so much. We'll have all the links below. Merry Christmas. This is a great Christmas present. Happy holidays and all of those things. Talk soon.
Thanks, Emily.